Before we journey into the profound depths of sacred geometry, consider this. The same geometric patterns that form the spiral of a galaxy are mirrored in the unfurling of a fern, the chambers of a nautilus shell, and perhaps most remarkably, within the structure of human consciousness itself. What you're about to discover is not merely intellectual knowledge, but a remembering of the universal language that has been hiding in plain sight all along. Have you ever wondered why certain patterns and shapes seem to resonate with something deep within your soul? What if the ancient alchemists weren't merely creating beautiful art when they carved intricate geometric designs into temple walls, but were actually encoding a sophisticated language of consciousness that modern science is only beginning to decipher? The sacred geometries that have adorned the most revered spiritual sites across civilizations aren't simply decorative elements. They are keys that unlock doorways to altered states of awareness that have been accessible to initiates throughout the ages. Today, we stand at the threshold of rediscovering this forgotten language that bridges the material and the divine. My fellow travelers on this path of awakening, I invite you to join me on an extraordinary journey, one that will take us from the microscopic patterns of your own DNA to the vast architectural blueprints of the cosmos. As someone who has spent decades studying both the scientific and mystical dimensions of sacred geometry, I can assure you that what lies ahead has the potential to fundamentally transform how you perceive reality itself. The geometric codes we'll explore together aren't merely abstract concepts. They are living forces that have shaped human consciousness since time immemorial. The ancients knew what quantum physicists are now confirming. The geometry is not just descriptive of reality, but generative of it. In these next 30 minutes, prepare to witness the veil between worlds grow thin as we decode the geometric patterns that form the very architecture of consciousness. Some of what I'll share has been hidden within mystery schools for centuries, while other revelations have emerged from cutting-edge research at the intersection of neuroscience and sacred mathematics. Our exploration will unfold along several fascinating pathways. First, we'll uncover the ancient origins of sacred geometry, tracing its presence in Egyptian temples, Greek philosophy, Hindu mandalas, and beyond. You'll discover how civilizations separated by vast distances and time somehow arrived at identical geometric understandings. We'll then venture into the first revelation, how these same patterns manifest throughout the natural world, from the spiral growth patterns of plants to the orbital mechanics of planets. More importantly, we'll examine how these patterns relate to the functioning of human consciousness and the structure of our nervous system. As we delve deeper into the mystery, we'll explore the fractal and holographic nature of awareness itself, examining groundbreaking research suggesting that our consciousness operates according to the same geometric principles that govern the cosmos. This isn't mere coincidence. It points to a profound interconnection between mind and universe that the ancients intuited through direct experience. Finally, we'll explore practical ways to work with sacred geometry in your own spiritual practice, from meditation techniques to environmental design that can help align your awareness with these fundamental patterns of creation. By the end of our journey, you'll possess both the conceptual understanding and practical tools to begin working directly with the geometric language of consciousness. The story of sacred geometry begins long before written history, etched into megalithic structures and cave paintings that still puzzle archaeologists today. But it's in ancient Egypt where we find some of the most sophisticated applications of these universal patterns. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, embodies the golden ratio, nasa phi. In its proportions, the same mathematical constant found throughout nature, from the spiral of galaxies to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. This divine proportion approximately 1.618 comma, creates forms that are inherently pleasing to human perception because they reflect the very patterns from which our consciousness emerged. In the temples of Karnak and Luxor, the ancient Egyptians weren't merely creating aesthetically pleasing architecture. They were constructing energetic machines' physical structures designed according to precise geometric principles to facilitate specific states of consciousness. The avenue of sphinxes, with its perfect alignment and spacing, wasn't simply impressive urban planning. It was designed to gradually shift the initiate's awareness as they approached the inner sanctum. Meanwhile, across the Mediterranean, Pythagoras and Plato were formalizing the study of sacred geometry in Greece. Plato identified the 5 regular polyhedra tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron, which he associated with the classical elements of fire, earth, air, water, and ether, or universe. These Platonic solids represent perfect geometric forms where all faces, edges, and angles are identical. To Plato, they weren't merely mathematical curiosities, but the fundamental building blocks of physical reality. In India, we find perhaps the most sophisticated system for mapping consciousness through geometry in the form of yantras, geometric diagrams used as meditation tools. The Sri Yantra, consisting of 9 interlocking triangles surrounded by lotus petals and enclosing circles, represents the systematic unfolding of consciousness from unity, the central bindu point, to multiplicity. Each of these traditions recognized something profound: that certain geometric patterns serve as bridges between dimensions of reality, between the seen and unseen, the material and the spiritual, the finite and the infinite. These weren't arbitrary designs, but precise tools for expanding and transforming consciousness. The first great revelation of sacred geometry is that the same patterns governing cosmic structures also orchestrate the dynamics of consciousness itself. This becomes evident when we examine the golden ratio and the closely related Fibonacci sequence in detail. The Fibonacci sequence 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13 reveals a profound mathematical truth. Each number is the sum of the 2 preceding it. What's remarkable is that the ratio between consecutive Fibonacci numbers progressively approximates phi, the golden ratio. This sequence appears with uncanny frequency throughout nature, in the branching patterns of trees, the arrangement of leaves on stems, the spiraling of galaxies, and even in the proportions of the human body. But these patterns extend beyond the visible realm into the architecture of consciousness itself. Research into neural networks reveals that our brain structures follow fractal scaling patterns, the same self-similar geometric organization found throughout nature. As neuroscientist Dr. Anirban Bandyopadhyay suggests, there may be a universal geometric language underlying both physical reality and conscious experience. The implications are profound. The geometric patterns we observe in nature aren't merely coincidental. They represent the fundamental algorithms through which consciousness itself structures experience. When we examine the microtubules within neurons, we discover that these tiny protein structures, which some theories identify as the seat of quantum effects in consciousness, organize themselves according to the same geometric principles that govern cosmic structures. Even more fascinating is how exposure to specific geometric forms appears to influence cognitive function. Research suggests that certain shapes can enhance memory, attention, and creativity, as if these forms resonate with the inherent structure of awareness itself. This isn't surprising when we consider that our visual cortex is specifically attuned to recognize patterns and symmetries that reflect the underlying geometry of reality. What emerges is a profound understanding. Consciousness isn't contained within the brain. It's a field phenomenon that follows the same geometric organizing principles evident throughout the cosmos. The ancient wisdom that, as above, so below, isn't merely poetic metaphor, but a precise description of how reality is structured across scales. As we venture deeper into the mystery, we encounter perhaps the most radical insight. Consciousness itself appears to be fractal in nature. A fractal, as you may know, is a pattern that repeats itself at different scales, creating infinite complexity from simple iterative rules. The branching pattern of a tree, for instance, repeats the same geometric relationship from trunk to tiniest twig. What's revolutionary about this understanding is that it applies not just to physical structures, but to consciousness itself. When researchers study brain activity patterns, they discover fractal scaling. The same patterns of electrical activity appear at multiple time scales, from milliseconds to hours. This suggests that consciousness doesn't operate linearly, but holographically, with each part containing information about the whole. The Sri Yantra, that ancient geometric meditation tool, demonstrates this principle perfectly. Its 9 interlocking triangles create 43 smaller triangles, each representing a specific aspect of consciousness. From the outermost level, Upara, representing the earth plane, to the innermost Bindu point, Sarva Anandamaya, representing pure consciousness and infinite bliss. The Sri Yantra maps the systematic unfoldment of awareness from unity to multiplicity and back again. What the ancients intuited through direct experience, modern science is now confirming through detailed analysis of neural networks. The central nervous system that governs our body and mind is fractally organized both in structure and function. This isn't mere coincidence, but suggests that fractal geometry may be the fundamental language through which consciousness expresses itself across all scales of existence. Perhaps most intriguing is the relationship between entropy, fractals, and consciousness. Researchers have noted that consciousness corresponds with increased entropy in brain activity, and fractals are highly entropic structures. When we enter expanded states of awareness during meditation, brain activity shows increased fractal scaling, as if consciousness is blooming into more complex geometric arrangements. The mystics have always known this. When they speak of the 1,000-petaled lotus of enlightened awareness, or describe consciousness expanding in geometric patterns during profound spiritual experiences, they aren't speaking metaphorically, they're describing the actual geometry of awakened consciousness. Understanding sacred geometry isn't merely an intellectual exercise. It offers practical pathways for transforming your experience of reality. By consciously working with these patterns, you can begin to align your awareness with the fundamental structures of creation. One of the most accessible ways to work with sacred geometry is through visualization meditation. Try this. Close your eyes and imagine a perfect sphere of golden light at your heart center. Feel its perfect symmetry and completeness. Now, visualize this sphere expanding to encompass your entire body. Notice how this simple geometric contemplation naturally quiets the mind and centers awareness in the present moment. For a more advanced practice, work with the Platonic solids as meditation objects. Begin with a tetrahedron, 4 triangular faces. Visualize it as a perfect form of fire energy at your navel center, rotating slowly. As you breathe with this image, you may notice how it naturally organizes and stabilizes your energy field. Beyond formal meditation, you can integrate sacred geometric awareness into your living environment. The spaces we inhabit profoundly influence our consciousness. Consider how cathedrals, with their soaring arches and geometric precision, naturally evoke a sense of transcendence. You can create similar effects in your own home by incorporating sacred geometric patterns in your decor. From artwork featuring the flower of life to furniture arrangements that reflect harmonic proportions. Even more directly, you can learn to recognize these patterns in nature. During your next walk outdoors, notice the Fibonacci spirals in ferns and pine cones, the hexagonal patterns of snowflakes, the branching fractals of trees. This isn't mere observation, it's a form of communion with a geometric intelligence that structures reality itself. Perhaps most powerful is the practice of sacred movement based on geometric patterns. Ancient traditions like sacred dance often incorporated precise geometric pathways that participants would trace with their bodies. These weren't arbitrary choreographies, but technologies for aligning human awareness with cosmic patterns. Even simple practices like walking a labyrinth itself, a sacred geometric form, can induce profound shifts in consciousness. By working consciously with sacred geometry, you're not merely appreciating beautiful patterns, you're actively participating in the same creative process through which consciousness structures reality across all scales of existence. This isn't metaphysical speculation, but a practical technology for expanding awareness that has been refined across millennia. As we approach the culmination of our journey, a transcendent perspective emerges. Sacred geometry isn't merely a subject of study, it's the fundamental language through which consciousness communicates with itself across all dimensions of existence. What the mystics discovered through direct experience and what scientists are now confirming through rigorous observation is that geometric patterns serve as a kind of universal grammar, a structured system through which infinite creative expression manifests. Whether we're examining the quantum vacuum fluctuations that give rise to physical reality or the highest states of unitive consciousness described by spiritual adepts, the same geometric principles appear. This understanding resolves the apparent paradox between scientific materialism and spiritual insight. The mathematician sees in sacred geometry the elegant equations that describe physical systems, while the mystic perceives in the same patterns the visible expression of divine intelligence. Both are correct. They're simply describing different aspects of the same fundamental reality. Perhaps most profound is the realization that you, as consciousness, are not separate from these patterns. You are an embodied expression of them. When you contemplate a perfect geometric form, you're not merely observing it as something external. You're recognizing an aspect of your own deeper nature. This is why sacred geometric meditation can feel like remembering rather than learning. Because at some level, these patterns are already encoded within the structure of your awareness. In this light, the ancient temple inscriptions, the mathematical discoveries, the artistic expressions of sacred geometry across cultures aren't merely human inventions, they're humanity's progressive recognition of the patterns inherent in consciousness itself. They represent moments in our collective awakening to the geometric language that has been speaking us into existence all along. As our journey draws to a close, I extend to you a cosmic invitation to continue exploring the sacred geometric patterns that weave through all dimensions of existence. The insights we've shared today are not the end, but the beginning of a profound path of discovery that has no final destination, only ever-deepening revelation. When you leave this space and return to your daily life, look with fresh eyes at the world around you. See the sacred geometry that patterns the unfurling of a rose, the spiraling of galaxies, and the rhythmic waves of your own consciousness. Remember that you are not merely observing these patterns, you are an embodied expression of them. In your moments of deepest meditation or spontaneous wonder, when the boundaries between self and universe grow thin, pay attention to the geometric forms that may arise in your awareness. These aren't merely subjective visions, but glimpses of the actual architecture of consciousness. as it structures itself into the multiplicity of creation. I invite you to join me next time as we explore the ancient mystery schools that preserved and transmitted this geometric wisdom through the ages. Until then, may you recognize in every perfect form, from the symmetry of a snowflake to the sacred proportions of your own body reflections, of the infinite geometric intelligence that dreams us all into being. Remember, the patterns are not merely out there. They are what you are.